Yeah, there we go. Can you hear me all right?
Hey, Hayden, how are you?
I'm well enough.
Did you do a night shift last night?
Half a shift. So,
Oh, nice. How long is a what's the longest shift you do?
8 hours.
Oh, okay. So it's like a full on.
Mm.
So like is a half like literally 4 hours? Is that what your half shift is?
Yep, just 4 hours. Honestly, it's less than that because I can
How was that
usually.
going?
It's actually less than that because I can usually use like an hour and a half to like clean up and stuff with my headphones on. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Okay, you prefer the night shift for that reason, right?
I prefer the night shift because I'm busy and I get paid more.
Oh yeah, you get the pay. What is it like $1 an hour more or something?
Yeah, that and I get paid on break as well.
Oh, sweet. So it's yeah, that's kind of I think I might be the same. I hate night shifts like crazy, but yeah, the idea that you could sort of like do your own thing and keep busier and actually throw your headphones on, that's amazing that they let you do that. Is that because you're just straight up cleaning?
Yeah, I can't do it while I'm in the kitchen, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd definitely take more nights. But yeah, that would drive me
Yeah.
insane.
Oh, cool. Oh, I'm excited for you that you get to do that, and sort of have some autonomy, some control over your experience at least. Very cool. How's your week otherwise? Good. Your
Oh,
weekend?
yeah, well enough. I worked on the script. There was one part I didn't get around to doing, and that was changing the science spiel to something a little more accurate. But
I love what you did this week, though. I've got some really positive things to share.
I had two different arguments for Mac to use in destroying Lake.
I saw that, and I'm gonna give you a third if you want a third,
Oh,
just
sure.
to
Go right
totally
ahead.
mess with your brain.
Right?
Um, before I forget, have you seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh my God, Hayden! How I don't know how more. This isn't your fault. I don't know how many more people do I know that haven't seen this. Probably the most interesting, well-made film I've seen in the last 2 decades.
What's it called? Everything.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Huh.
It is if Doctor Strange and the Matrix and Monty Python and Sesame Street all had a baby while doing LSD.
Yeah, I know
Like,
some things like that. I know this really great song called "Welcome to the Internet." That's just like that.
what's it called? Welcome to the Internet.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is an accurate representation of the internet.
Actually, now that you say that, there's also a very strong Midnight Gospel slash Rick and Morty element too. It's one of the most beautifully written, heartbreaking story about a woman, probably about my age. At the beginning of the movie, she realizes she doesn't love her husband. She's got a shitty relationship with her daughter. She's just been audited by the tax people. So she's trying to do all her taxes. And the auditor is played by Jamie Lee Curtis of the movie Halloween, but she's big and dumpy and terrifying. And she realizes, so it's basically a multiverse movie. In the very last movie you'd expect to see a multiverse. So it's like this super heartbreaking drama that just happens to be couched in some of the most crazy. Like at one point in the movie, the main characters just turn into rocks and start talking to each other as rocks, because in that universe, that's the only form of life that could be supported. Like it's just
It's the
people
Rick and Morty
fighting.
chaos level.
Oh, and there's like one scene where this woman is fighting off bad guys with like big long dildos, and you're like, what? There's people with like
Oh, that
wieners for fingers.
that doesn't even move the meter. You should have played Saints Row. There's literally an item in game. Big giant purple dildo, one of the best items in game, and they make everyone run around with them. It's ridiculous.
You got to see this movie because if it was just weird, okay,
Mhm.
but it's weird plus has a wicked story. We watched that and the Nicolas Cage movie that just came out where he plays Nicolas Cage.
Mhm.
So good. Mm. If you get a chance, if you do get a chance to see everything, I just cannot recommend it highly enough. What am I doing? This is not your document.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you're looking at someone's math homework.
I was looking at my own math homework for a video that I had to make for the government.
Oh,
Okay, here we go. This looks like yours. That's more like it. Hang tight. Okay. Love it. I'm really excited to talk to you about this. This is really great. I think you've made some super big strides forward, and I really, really enjoyed reading this.
I was drinking a lot of root beer when I wrote that.
A lot of what?
Root beer.
Is that your secret weapon? Is that your spinach?
Yep. Well, I need
root beer.
I need something to like wake me up and keep me focused. So that's about all I can do.
I love that root beer. I've never heard anybody say, okay, well, good. The root beer is working, my friend.
I mean, tea works too, but I don't. But there's no good tea at the house, so I have to go out for tea.
What about iced tea? Are you an iced tea guy?
I like like the powdery iced tea I drank like when I was a kid, but I don't really. Again, we don't really have a lot of it in the house.
I'm drinking it right now. I just realized, crazy. Although it looks like a hearty scotch. Do you mind if I just chug on through and give you my thoughts?
Oh, go right ahead. No problem.
Generally speaking, right off the bat, love what you've done in terms of just giving it three-dimensionality. This went from a story in which we just suddenly, like, it was good. When you first showed me this section of the story, I could see that you had all the ingredients to make it what it needed to be. No question. You as always, your structure is always I think one of your greatest strengths. You've got rich world building always. You've got great meta structure, kind of on the higher level of the macro build, and it's always like it is, kind of slowing down and marinating, enjoying the ride, not just rushing through it. And you've really made this an enjoyable ride. So I'm not even going to worry. Later on, next draft, we can go through and make this thing look pretty. I'm mostly interested in making sure your basics are here. So I love the dialogue switch right off the bat, where Rebecca's saying, you sure you know where you're going? And Thomas says he's lost. That's great. Kind of finding their way through. I like this. I like the fact that they're a bit lost and trying to figure out where they were. I still had a little bit of a question right around here. Am I inside? Am I outside? Where am I? But, fix that up and we're good to go. Little things like this we'll catch next time around. Like realized it was already full. Almost the entire classroom was filled up. You don't want to use the same word twice in the same sentence. Okay. Not worried about it right now. Let's just keep on moving, kind of thing. Generally speaking, loving the immersive vibe. I feel like you're absolutely putting me in the space. I feel like I can, right? When you read a book, if you can kind of visually, while you're reading the book, you're imagining the world, your visual imagination is just working hard in a good way, an enjoyable way. You're now giving me that freedom. You're not making me what you had before, and it's not you, it's writers in general, me too. What you had before made me have to, okay, he's not giving me much to work with, so I guess I'll try to imagine what this world is like. Whereas now you're not spoon feeding me either. You're not going too far the other way. You're giving me some really cool, rich details here. One suggestion I would have, rather than saying, immediately almost the entire class stopped what they were doing to stare at the man who had discovered aliens, I felt, you just kind of gave me the whole enchilada right there. I don't want you to tell me that yet. Personally, I want to discover that he's the guy who discovered aliens, because it steals a bit of the dramatic thunder of what's coming later. So I would go more into the describe the man, however you want to do it. I like that you said he's barely 30. At first I was like, I don't know does it work if he's that young? But then I thought, no, let's run with it. Let's go with this like late 20s thing. What made you decide to go? How was he always this young to you, or is this a recent change?
I kind of had mixed feeling. The point of making him younger was to kind of emphasize the point that he really doesn't know what he's doing, so to speak. He's cheating, so to speak.
Okay. I like that.
And I weirdly noticed that a lot of scientists tend to stop doing useful things when they get older.
This is good because it tells me that there's some, potentially some hubris involved, some overarching ambition, a desire to make a name for himself, very much of this age, kind of thing like that. So it's immediately believable at first, like, because in my mind he was like older than me in my head. Mm-hmm. That when I suddenly saw barely 30, I went, does that work? I'm not going to judge it. Does that work? Yeah, that kind of works. So I love that you went there with that. Show us your tits. Laughed my ass off. Yes, please. I'll take all of that you want to throw in there because it's so irreverent. Like it's such a great buildup. You really took the notes from our last session and it made it so fun. Well dressed, well made Italian black suit. I mean, this is a whole different guy cat than you gave me last week. Mm-hmm. Blonde hair. You've still got the messy blonde hair, emerald green eyes. I'm assuming like what I'm looking for is he. I may have missed it. I'm curious to see if any of the ladies are interested in him. I have to believe they are. Did I miss that?
No,
can we get some?
I can add that in. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go there necessarily.
I totally would. Why not? You know, like it's up to you. It's your character, but I thought you're already making him.
My problem is if I go there, then I'm inevitably going to have a scene where Thomas catches him with some student or intern or some shit.
Oh, I like that. What are you afraid of? You want to write that scene?
Well, no, I'm afraid of like. Actually, I didn't think of any of this yesterday, so that's why.
That's okay. Don't feel beholden. He could be the kind of guy who just loves to have the attention and almost goes there with female students, but then like you got choices. But the fact that you've painted this beautiful picture, he's got the blonde hair, he's got the gold, the emerald green, not just green, emerald green eyes that match his tie. I mean, this guy is, you know, just on the way he's dressed alone, for sure he's going to have, and his intelligence, like for sure that's attractive to some women. A lot of women, actually.
Also, the reason I picked emerald and black is because that's generally the color of Eldritch and stuff.
I love it. So I love the thematic tie-in.
That's a little foreshadowing there.
Yeah, and I can see one or two that, like, I wouldn't restrict it also to heteronormative. You know, like for sure, why wouldn't he be sexy to some of the male students? And you can go either way or both with that. But I wouldn't be afraid to go there. I would consider at least strongly going there. But show us your tits was so funny. Like I laughed out loud when I read that because I thought, oh yeah, Hayden went there. I love this. So all of this was, you know, my suggestion would be have Dr. Lake not respond to that rather than fall in, you know, his smile falls into a frown. Nothing wrong with that. Keep that if you want. But I like the idea that we're looking for him to react.
We're not touching, and maybe he sort of looks over. Cares about yet. He's an attention hog.
Yeah, like so long as I kind of want him to remain a mystery until he starts talking. Whereas if he reacts to show us your tits negatively, we're like, oh, okay, so he's a guy who is sensitive to that kind of stuff like that. And I feel like I know too much. Whereas if you keep him neutral right up at the moments he speaks, and I like a guy who's like, show us your tits, and everybody's like, oh, come on, man, don't talk disrespect or whatever the reaction is. Shut up! Don't you know who that is? And you can choose to do the, you know, keep or not keep the alien. He's the aliens guy. I love it. Like, don't you know who he is more interesting to me because it keeps me hooked. I'm like, no, I don't know who he is. I can't wait to find out who he is. And if he says the alien guy, like, oh, okay, he's the alien guy. No. Keep it a mystery. It would be my recommendation.
I wanted to do the alien guy because I was thinking the guy from Discovery Channel with the crazy hair and shit.
Okay. Well, my suggestion would be if you are going to keep it, just go, don't you know who he is? He's the alien guy. And leave it there rather than he's the guy who proved aliens. Let him prove to us that aliens are real in his presentation. Food for thought. Keep it or leave it. Strut onto the podium, turning the projector on with a click of a remote. I was looking for a little bit more. You've got him so well dressed, and you've got him like you know potentially sexually attractive to some of the people. Certainly charismatically attractive. This little bit where he struts up to the podium. That feels pregnant with greater possibility. That moment, like he's like he steps up. Whatever he does would be like, you know, Dumbledore like assembling, you know, whatever he's going to do, and everybody's like, oh, what's he going to do, right? However you want to play with that. Love how you're doing this. He sets everything up. We got the tardigrade. This is awesome. Life is finicky. This was really good too because it really clarified. I feel like you made it clear for me what are his main arguments, and I love that you're having him point at religion and then point the limitations of religion and the limitations of science. And what it appears to me that you're saying, so this is just feedback from reading, is it feels like you're saying, here's what I'm really saying. If you strip down what Lake is saying. By targeting religion and then immediately targeting science, by the way, awesome. I love that you got him hitting the experts in both fields. You're saying this is not a divine miracle in which a God needs to be involved, nor are scientists right that it's so impossible for life to live out there. So his main arguments is don't need a God and life is more resilient than you think.
I was
So
trying
those
to
are your two
I
main.
was trying to think of a third like source to add in there, but I couldn't think of anything.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so good. So you can take or leave any of these suggestions I make. My suggestion might be for life to exist at all, never mind sentient life requires a miracle. Ask your local church, mosque, or synagogue, and they'll claim it's an act of God. I wouldn't be afraid. I don't think it's too much to throw in any of your big, your big threes. You're basically looking at all the Judeo-Christian. You're looking at Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and I've heard this kind of thing said lots of times. So I think you can embrace all three, because what you're doing is you're saying, I don't just think Christianity is crazy. I think they're all crazy because they all think that you need to have a God for this to be real. But I love how simple you've made this. For life to exist at all, ask people of faith and they'll tell you this. But then you totally zing the other way too. Ask a scientist and they'll tell you. Now, here's what I would suggest: rather than it's all about the environment, and again, take or leave this. What is like I thought, okay, what is the heart of what Hayden is saying? And I think if we can zero in on this, then you can make choices to keep or leave how much of the rest of this that you want. Because I think you're getting tighter and cleaner. Ask a scientist, they'll tell you it's virtually it's a virtually impossible perfect chemical storm, a mathematical equation that proves nothing could survive the hostile conditions of space. In other words, if religion goes too far this way, saying you need a God for all of this to exist, science, arguably, in his opinion, goes too far the other direction and says, unless you can prove it mathematically, there's no way, life could exist. And because his whole next thing he's about to use is the tardigrade. He's going to say, now, tardigrade, you want God? There it is. And guess what? Contrary to what science would have said even 100 years ago, life is more sustainable outside of this biosphere than we think. So you're sort of making those critical arguments that sort of are at the heart of this. So play with that, take it or leave it. And I love the provocative. I love that you're still ending on the. And by the way, this never gets boring for me. I don't know what it is, but you've got nearly 2+ full pages of explaining the science, but you are nailing the science that matters. You're making it interesting. When we think of places you might find,
actually,
you might find the life.
All that stuff, I'm going to delete that stuff and replace it with something else because
Sure.
it's no longer on the topic, and I don't feel like sorting out. Like I'll probably like keep it for like reference, but I'm probably going to make a whole new set of paragraphs to more focus on like I discovered aliens, me.
I love that. I'm behind that 100%. Because this whole idea that when it comes down, at least to the beginning, and I would love to see that when it's done, because I already can tell that it's going to be stronger than ever. Those so-called experts are wrong. No divine. No, so to me, you don't have to have him say this. You can if you want, but for me, Paul, had to get it down. Okay, what's his main religion argument against religion? No divine miracle required. No God in charge. It's very, very Lovecraftian. Next. Life out there, that should say life, not if, and life out there is far more resilient than we might imagine. Now he's making a claim there. He's saying, and life is and I would actually probably have him there. He says, there's two things I know for sure. We don't need God, and life is far more resilient than we think. So however you word that, or something along that line, so long as that, in however many combinations of paragraphs and sentences, as long as those two, assuming, of course, that I've accurately nailed what your argument is, your twofold argument, I think it's powerful. So in other words, he has managed to trump both religion and science and said, hey, I know, but he hasn't told us how he knows yet. And that's the punchline that's coming. And I love this. He says, I know. Now then he goes, blasphemy, you might be thinking, what is it? You say, and how dare I, you might go the other direction, just a thought. Instead of saying blasphemy, you might be thinking, that's good. That works. He says, some variation of how can I make such a claim? Because what he's doing is what I love is that he's actually defending two things at once. And this has always been the power of this whole thing. What he's really saying is, hey, there is life out there that could probably live here. And number two, I'm the guy who found out, which makes me a fucking genius. Right. So those are the two things he seems to be projecting. Mm-hmm. And he can't leave this lecture without both of those coming through from him. I'm pretty sure there's life out there that could live here. And I'm the genius who discovered it. Seems to be am I right? That's sort of the essence of, if you were to boil this lecture down, that's what he's saying.
I'm awesome and I discovered aliens. That's basically the sum total of it.
There you go. So I should be taken seriously because I've discovered what no other scientist has discovered. He's saying it in not so many words, but however you want to juice that up, I'm a fan. I do, however you change it, love, regardless, even if you didn't change it, I love this because this is where for this week I really felt there's always been a strong storytelling component to it. And I know you said, well, I kind of ripped it off from different nature shows I watched. Don't care. It's as long as it's not flat out plagiarizing. I feel like you're telling me a story about Titan now, and it's really engaging. Permit me to read through this if you don't mind, because it's just fun to read. Differences between you. The word "but" starts 3 of your sentences in a row, or your paragraphs in a row. I might see if you could fiddle with that a bit. But differences between you and even the mighty tardigrade, who is as different from human as you can find it, is only a variation of a single theme, dialects of a single language, the genetic code of life on Earth. You could say of life in the universe. My suggestion would be, because you're comparing, you're comparing the tardigrade and us. I might say, and you're saying that we and the tardigrade are variations of a single theme, I might stress the genetic code of life in the universe, unless that takes you way off, because that's what you're trying to, I think, say, is that there are commonalities between all life in this universe, which could bring one of them here. Mm-hmm. Take it or leave it. But I ask myself, what would life be like on other worlds? This is great. This is exactly what we should hear him saying, because this is the whole point. I asked myself, what would life be like on other worlds? Worlds with a completely different history, chemistry, and evolution from our planet. Excellent points, Hayden. This is so good. This is both scientifically interesting and narratively interesting. Worlds with a completely different history, you said that already. Titan, for instance, like Earth, it has an atmosphere that's mostly nitrogen, but 4 times denser, no oxygen at all, average temperature, blah, blah, blah. It's good. But hidden beneath its cloud lines, lies a familiar landscape. That's a bit wordy. There might be a better way to say that. Doesn't matter. It rains on Titan. It has rivers and coastlines. Titan, hundreds of lakes, vapor rising, falls again as rain. Like I feel it's very visual. Like I feel like I'm seeing almost cinematically in my mind everything you're describing. Of course, on Titan, the seas and the rain are made not of water, but of methane and ethane. On Earth, these molecules form natural gas, but on frigid Titan, they're liquid. Titan has lots of water, but all of it's frozen hard as rock, in fact, blah, blah, blah. So you can decide to keep how, you can make an executive decision about how much of that information we need. It's all interesting. Probably you want to kind of condense it. What is your point? Like if I'm in the crowd, I'm thinking, because if he's a good teacher, what he's doing, he's going from general to specific. That's the number one rule of teaching, general to specific. And it usually starts specific, goes general. And so in other words, it says, hey, everybody, we're here to talk about this. And then you go into this and you expect, like I did in my class, right? Today, we're going to talk about how to build a character. Out we go. And by the time we're done, we say, okay, now when you build a character, these are the 3 things you need to do, whatever they are, and you're done. So if I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, nice. Titan is like this. What's your point? I think his point is that Titan, even though there's a lot of ways that Titan is nothing like Earth, there are many ways in which it's just like Earth. And if life was going to be able to live here, Titan would be a prime candidate for the planet it came from. Is that your argument?
Yeah. Wait, I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
Is that essentially what you're saying, Hayden? Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying. The reason I'm even bringing up Titan, and I love that it's so casually, like he says, Titan, for instance. He makes it sound so casual, which I love. Titan's his whole point, right? But he's leading. He's a good teacher. He's thinking, let's take Titan, for example, which I just happened to find a meteorite from, covered in life, which you'll get to, which is perfect. And I almost want to see Mac when he says, like Titan, for example. I would not be bothered at that point. He said, Titan, for instance. Show us Mac sitting there going, rolling her eyes. And we don't know why she's rolling her eyes, but it's because she knew he was going to bring up Titan. She's completely ready for this lecture. Like the impression I get of Mac is that she was really hoping to take him down in this lecture, which is why I love her immediately.
Yeah. My whole thing is like over the rest of the book, she's going to be the one that's going to be ending his career, for lack of a better word.
Love it.
So he's going to get more and more desperate as she keeps hammering away at him.
Good for you for introducing her here, then. This is exactly where you should introduce her. It's beautiful. So maybe intersperse, because there's 3 reactions. This is like an opera. The 3 reactions I'm mostly interested in, too late, are Thomas, who is the sycophant, Rebecca, who's cautiously listening, hoping that this is good for her boyfriend, and Mac, who is determined to destroy this man. Mm-hmm. But we don't know any. We know about Rebecca and Thomas. We don't know about Mac yet, which is why her thing is so great at the end. It's all great. Now, masterstroke, Hayden. I love the way you laid this out. The fact that you have 2 softball questions that are in support of his lecture, brilliant. Is there only microscopic life on Titan, or could there be larger xenobiology on Titan? It's great. It's a softball. It's not controversial. It's almost as if he planted that student to ask that question to facilitate his lecture. So he's like, great question. One I hope to answer soon. Blah, 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 blah. Not only, and I'm sure you did this intentionally, and if you didn't, beautiful accident. The 2 questions aren't merely softballs. The 2 questions aren't merely supportive, but the 2 questions are really, really important to the story. Because what you're saying is, if I understand correctly, if there is life on Earth, if there is life on Titan, are you talking like microbes, or are you talking like potentially fully, like much more evolved life, mammalia, whatever, reptilia, amphibia, any of those things? So it's a really important question that puts in my mind, oh, good question. So the fact that, so I would absolutely have his answer do more than be just a general thing. I would have, and let me just put the note here, I would have him give, even if it's speculation, an answer that leads to what we see later. And I don't know what specifically, but basis, I'm just going to put this down for my sake. Basis of question number 1. If there is life on Titan, here, I'm just going to move that up top here. Hang on, so I can actually read it. Basis of question 1. Story basis, specifically, the reason why it's important that this be one of the questions that's asked. If there is life on Titan, is it evolved? Is it potentially evolved to the point where it could be like us? Now, he's not saying it. The student isn't asking it this way, but that's what, if I was you, that's what I would want the audience to have in their head. Could it contend with us if we were to come here? And then your next question is the question. It's the most important question. Basis of question number 2 for my benefit. Could life from Titan survive here? So brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That's exactly the kinds of questions that should, in my opinion, that should be asked. This is just brilliant. It's exactly the way you should write this scene. So you've given me, and now again, we haven't even got to my favorite part yet, to Mac. But what I love is that you've made the university experience real to me. You've shown us what it's like in that classroom when they first arrive. You've given us tasty bits. I want to see more tasty bits, because at the end of the conversation between Rebecca and Thomas, seeing their reactions and hearing comments they make are super important. But you're keeping it focused on Lake. I love it. I wouldn't be opposed, like, for example, when he gives an answer, these are just feeders doing it. When he gives an answer, show the students responding with satisfaction, because that's real. That's actually what happened. Like, there's something really satisfying about a student asks a question and everybody's like, oh yes, very good. This is like almost like a Monty Python skit. Oh, very good answer. Yes, very smart, Dr. Lake. And Mac's reaction. Please don't have to do it for each one. Consider it. I'm not suggesting you absolutely must, but the response to his answering is part of also what's building our sense of how important this guy is in the minds of these people. But these are great. This is a great, everything about this is feeling fantastic. And it's a perfect 1, 2, 3 setup too. I'm sure you know about the rule of 3s, and if you don't, the whole idea of setting up a situation is first give him a couple of softballs, and then you throw him the curveball, and it's Mac. And it's all about, because all we need, what do we need to see? We need to see 2 things in Mac's response, in my opinion. Number 1, you need doubt planted in the minds of us and students, because so far this has basically been the cult of Lake, right? He's presented a compelling argument. students seem to just assume he's telling the truth. Their questions aren't even questioning what he's saying. They're both of these early questions are clearly just assuming he's totally telling, he knows what he's talking about. So it's like, oh, that's cool. And then Matt comes in like the big fucking wet blanket and drops the bomb. My suggestion would be, okay, so at the end, my suggestion would be, the thing at the end, let's just get this out of the way first. I would suggest that he not say anything to him like, well, look at the time. I'm sorry, we won't be able to. No, that made him sound, it was too nice, way too nice. I would love to see daggers in his eyes at Mac, personally. But here's a suggestion, and I know you've probably got some of your own. My suggestion, and I love that Mac is this good. You've already got this sort of embedded. I love that you do this. So I'm just riffing on what you did, which is part of what we talked about last week. Her first question is intentionally vague, and make it, and it's a trap. It's a soft trap. Not everyone agrees with your. Sorry, Mr. Can I just ask a question over here? Yeah, yes, Miss Mac. What would you like? Not everyone agrees with your conclusion, though, do they, Dr. Lake? I mean, no offense, but some people see it differently. And then he answers like you've done it. He totally takes the bait. Well, everyone who's done their research does. Anyway, next question. So in other words, he's hoping, like you've already established, that he can shame her into silence by simply saying, well, clearly you haven't done your research. And he does it without saying it directly to her. Then it's funny you mentioned that, because I did some more digging. So now I'm here riffing just on you again. And I found that the governing academic body of xenobiology complained that your research hadn't been properly peer reviewed, and that when they did examine your findings, they were unable to verify key pieces of evidence. Yes, well, they didn't have access to everything that I had. Yeah. Apparently, that was their main complaint when they asked you to submit evidence. Dr. Ronson said, and I quote, Dr. Lake was unwilling to sit with our team and became combative, in one instance, throwing a copy of his book at the head of the Academy president's executive assistant. Now, you don't have to keep any of these details, but you can see that what I'm doing is I'm having her, she's absolutely able to nail all of the things that he's doing. I'm just realizing I got a couple of spelling mistakes. So what is she doing? She's playing dumb in the beginning. Well, not everybody agrees, right? Yeah, well, the people who did their research agree. Okay, next question. Yeah, but I did more research, and the people in charge of like xenobiology internationally, they said they couldn't really prove that your things were fine. And even here, she's being gentle, because she's saying the fault in his research may have simply been that it wasn't properly peer reviewed, which doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that it hasn't yet passed the official academic test. So she's taken this little stabs at his credibility. So all she's doing here is she's saying, yeah, well, you haven't really passed the test about that. And he says, yeah, well, they didn't, they couldn't have passed the test. They didn't have access to all the information. At which point she really goes for the jugular. She says, yeah, I know they didn't have all the information because you wouldn't give it to them. And when they asked for it, you literally became physically violent. And then silence from Lake, where this time he's not saying anything. And my suggestion is have her go in and kick him in the nuts with this, or some version of this. In fact, I think it's true that there's been no independent verification of your claims within the scientific community at all. Some have even called it, she looks at the article again, a flight of fancy from a man less in love with science than with science fiction. Death glare from Lake. And my suggestion is, because bells don't ring in universities, they don't have bells that ring or buzzers that go off. Somebody runs in with an announcement. Hey, everybody, just sorry to interrupt. I know class, Mr. Lake, I hope you don't mind. Everybody, they're selling popcorn out in the hallway. And it's like popcorn that's been like laced in acid. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. But it's like, or they're selling, hey guys, it's summer and it's snow cones, right? It's like, hey guys, snow cones for 25 cents out in the hallway. And kind of saves the day, But I would have him, as everybody's running out of the room, because everybody's relieved. I bet you could hear a pin drop in that room when Mac drops that final bomb. And the fact that she would do it in stages and do it within the space of about 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm Rebecca, by the way, I'm looking at Mac going, yeah, you go, girl. Like, fuck it. Like, I don't even know this guy, Lake. I'm not even sure that he's crazy or not crazy, but did she ever just undress this guy with facts? And so if I'm one of the other students in the room and somebody comes in and says, hey, everybody, snow cones in the hallway, I'm like, here I come. Because I just got to get out of that room because it's awkward as fuck, right? Like it's like thick, the tension. But the idea that everybody walks out, if I was a director and this was a movie, I would say, okay, everybody, I want you to leave. Mac, you stay in your chair. Lake, you don't move. Thomas and Rebecca, you don't move. There's 4 people in this room who don't move when everybody's like, get the fuck out of here. And that's Mac, who just looks at him with a grin because she knows she got under his skin. Then eventually she gets up and leaves first. Lake, you know, maybe he looks over at Thomas and Rebecca and once he's left and he storms out of there and you're left with Rebecca and Thomas. Because I would love to see the scene end where Rebecca looks at Thomas and Thomas looks at her and if it was me, I would have him go like, Dr. Lake is awesome. And like, he's more in love than ever because he totally like what just happened with Mac just went right over his head, but it didn't go over Rebecca's head. She's like, dude, did you hear what she said? So it's a beautiful way to start the story. Like, it's just fucking amazing. Like, I would definitely dig in with that, but Guy, you've nailed it. It's all in the Mac thing. Take whatever you want there. My suggestion would be stage it something like that, where it's like she goes in 4 times. One with an easy one, then a question about his being peer reviewed, question about him himself. Like the third thing about him, you threw a book at them when they wanted evidence. That's an attack on him personally. Because it suggests his temperament isn't stable. And in the end, she says, but look, at the end of the day, what people are saying is that your idea is quite frankly more science fiction than science. And that would be the ultimate insult. Especially if it ends up being partly true. Like, I still love the idea that it turns out he's right and he's in love with science fiction.
Oh, yeah. He's not wrong, but he's still an ass.
But the character, like everything in this opening scene now is more than just a scene showing him teaching. It is revealing huge character stuff and story stuff. Brilliant questions you had there. Any questions on my feedback?
No, not really. By the way, what did you think of the other 2 dialogue options I set up? Any thoughts on those?
Let me go back to it.
Don't get me wrong, I like yours more. I think it'll be better for, like, you know, some of my stuff will probably be better for, like, later in the book. But, yeah.
I like what you did in terms, especially, I think my suggestion would be like I read an article from every single paper you'd written up to that point was rather disproved. I would avoid anything that goes for, like,
the jugular.
Well, I would save the jugular for last, but I would make it the least personal and the most provable. In other words, it's all personal, of course, to him. All of this is personal to him. But rather than saying everything you've written has been just like, I would focus it specifically on this one thing. This is his precious prize. This is the thing. In fact, you could also, another thing you could add in there is something I think you said last week, which is, if it turns out this is really the only thing, his only claim to fame, and the only reason it got any traction is because it was exciting and a university got a boner and gave him a position. You could play into that, but I don't need to see him completely discredited. I just need to see this finding. It turns out has not been peer reviewed, has not been properly examined. He's resistant to it being properly examined. By the way, all of this makes him look incredibly guilty, especially if he's hot-tempered as well, and that he's more in love with science fiction than science. I'm assuming that what you've done with Miss Mac is that you have actually proven that he's full of shit. So I'm assuming now, so he's just a big fraud. And I go into the rest of the story with that and then discover, no, not entirely. And that's interesting to me because you didn't set him up as an expert who's flawless. You did set him up as a phony. And then we're going to find out it's the truth, as with most people, is in between. He is a genius and deeply flawed. And it will be the ruination of him. So yeah, I would pull, some of the stuff you have in let me just see here. Some of the stuff you have here in this section really works. And I've sort of highlighted some of those points. You can kind of look through those if you want. I would probably tend to structure it around something like this and then end on that note. Again, if it was me and I was the director, I want to clear that room so that the only people left are Mac, just for a couple seconds, not for a long time. She would be the last student to leave. Like once the second last student left, she would get up and leave. She wouldn't hang around longer than that, probably, I'm guessing. And I would love it if Lake thinks he's alone in the room. Like that would be the juiciest way to end this. He thinks all the students have gone because he hasn't noticed Rebecca and Thomas because they had to take some shitty seat way in the back. And maybe he says something under his breath. Maybe he throws something across the room and then looks up and realizes that they're there and quickly disappears. Like, especially if if you were to do that, I would have Lake maybe pick up a chalk, eraser or whatever he's got and chuck it across the room and see them and then storm out. And then rather than have Thomas and Rebecca go look for his office, they follow him out. How awkward is that? They're walking away. That could be really interesting if he's sort of slightly embarrassed or just mad at Mac or both. And that's how they meet. It's juicy, man. You're setting some good shit up here. I'll send you these notes. Any other thoughts, questions?
I can't think of really anything. Though I will admit, I am very glad I got rid of all of the extra stuff that was clogging up the bottom that wasn't doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Where's the scene? I'm just going to write on it. It's also, I'm really proud of you, if I can say that, just watching the evolution of this scene, because I went back to the first version of this you ever sent me and compared it with where it is now.
I think part of the reason is I'm finally starting to get into the story. Because when we first pulled this out, this was a little side story I wrote to draw people into another story I'd written. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot that this is actually a spin-off of the original idea.
It's a novel that's supposed to be inside of another novel.
Yeah. Well played, man. That's awesome. Okay, I've just sent you the notes. Is this time next week good for you again?
Works perfectly for me.
Awesome. Let me just see. Where are you? Why don't I see you here? Yep, there you are. Perfect. All right,
so
we'll see you
for next week.
You betcha.
Perfect. See you then.
See you then, man. Ciao.
Ciao.